If you're new to floristry or arranging flowers and you want to learn to create a vertical arrangement just like this, then today's video tutorial is taking you right back to basics so you can learn how to create this very beautiful and elegant design. Keep watching for the full tutorial. Welcome back to today's design. Now I'm going to be going right back to basics today and looking at a simple line arrangement or a vertical arrangement, often referred to as a vertical line, and it's quite often the first arrangement that you learn if you're studying formally at college or if you're participating in a hobby-based course in your local flower club or at your local college. So it's a vertical arrangement which is going to go upwards, often referred to as a line, but it is not a form linear design. So if you are studying level 3 or beyond, then this isn't an example of a form linear arrangement. That is something completely different, and I don't want you to get the two confused. Now, I started this channel a couple of years ago with teaching the Back to Basics series, and I've decided that I'm going to revisit it and look at each design again. So if you're new to the channel, then this is a really good place to start, because I'm taking the designs right back to the basic steps and showing you how to create an arrangement from the start to the finish. And don't forget that you can ask questions in the comment box underneath the video and I'll answer them as quickly as I can. So if you haven't been here before, then welcome. My name is Sharon. If you have been following me for a while, then you might have seen me create the line arrangement before, but I'm sure there's something extra that you can learn in each video. So stick along and see what information I can pass on to you today. Now, my choice of flower for today is a pink gerbera. And these are florist gerbera, but you can quite often get them in the supermarket. If you can't get hold of gerbera, then go for something like a single carnation or a rose. If you're a bit more confident, you can also do it with a sunflower, but I would go with a smaller flower that's more manageable. And my first hint is to pick one flower type. In my case, it's all gerbera, and one colour. Don't mix your flowers. If you're a beginner, make it easy for yourself and go for one flower type, gerbera, rose or carnation, and keep it simple and easy. It's difficult to mix colours when you're a beginner, and you need that extra bit of experience to be able to blend and coordinate a range of colours. My next tip, so tip 2, is going to be to pick a container that's either the same colour as your flowers or a neutral colour like a green. I would probably suggest that you avoid white, because white can sometimes be a little bit stark against darker coloured flowers, and it's hard sometimes to get a link between the top of your arrangement and the bottom of your arrangement when you're using a white container. Having said that, if white is your favourite colour and you're going to use white flowers, then choosing a white container is really good. So choose something that's quite neutral. I've picked a burgundy colour one, which definitely isn't neutral, but it connects really nicely with the darker coloured leaves that I'm going to be placing at the back of the design. And that will help give me a link, it's called repetition, between the top flowery part of my arrangement and the base itself. So it looks like a complete design rather than two, a top and a bottom, that don't link together. And it's exactly like fashion or interior designing. If you're going to wear a top, quite often you'll coordinate it with the bottoms, and that rule applies really in flower arranging as well. And then my tip number 3 is probably going to be pick a very basic container that doesn't have a heavy pattern on it, something plain and that coordinates with your flower. And for this style, it's quite a formal arrangement, so it's formally arranged, and I think for this style of arrangement, you're better off using floral foam rather than wire netting. And if you're looking for something more environmentally friendly, then there are loads of videos on the channel. But wire netting tends to suit a more informal, loosely arranged flower arrangement rather than something that's more formal like I'm doing today. So I'm going to use green foam. You could use Agrawol or the Fiber Flora as well, because they're going to work just as well in this design. But I've got what is still probably the most popular mechanic. We are definitely moving away from using the green foam because it doesn't compost down and it's not particularly good for the environment, but it's still massively used. And still, the arrangements with floral foam far outweigh the videos in the more sustainable mechanics. But I'm here to give you an example of different styles. Now, this was my first choice, and the reason I decided not to use this, even though the colour is brilliant, is a fabulous colour link. Generally with a floral design, you go twice, sometimes 3 times the height of the container. And I felt I had these beautiful gerbera, and I was going to end up cutting them down quite small to keep them in proportion with my container. So I then changed to this container and found something that was going to help link the two together. So that's why I discarded this one. And this one is a food canister, or I bought it, put tea bags in, but I've always used it as a container. This is great for beginners because you can use it across a range of designs. And this one here is an orchid vase. So this originally came with a gorgeous orchid in it, and I've repurposed it. It was a grey colour, and I've spray painted it to this nice burgundy colour. Right, enough talking. If you haven't been here before, I do like to explain all the mechanics and the flower choice before I start, because I think that's one of the most important elements in floral design. If you don't understand why you're creating a design or how you're creating it, then you don't get all that background underpinning knowledge that you really need to know. The foam I'm using today is the green foam, and I haven't got a huge piece. I don't have a massive selection of flowers. I only have 5 gerberas to use and a little bit of greenery, so I don't need a huge piece of floral foam. What I will have to remember is that when I keep this hydrated and I add water to it, that I bring the water level up to about here, because this foam doesn't quite reach the bottom of my container. And that's really important with any type of floral design. You need to be able to keep hydrating your foam, otherwise it'll dry out and your flowers will age and die prematurely. If you haven't been here before, then it's time that you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell to be told every time I upload a new video. And you really need to share this with everybody you know, because the more people that are here, the more videos I can produce. Now my foam is in. I've got 1/3 of a block in there. So I've cut a green block of foam into 3, soaked it properly by allowing it to sink under its own weight, and then I've placed it into my container. And if you're new, you will see, or you might not be able to, or you might not have noticed, but I'm going to explain. I've kept the foam below the edge of my container. I haven't left it an inch or so above the container, because that means I'm going to have a lot of foam to cover at the end, and the bottom of my arrangement becomes very messy and very cluttered. Now, gerberas can be a little bit tricky to care for and condition. They're not the easiest of bloom to look after. And what I've done with 2 of the gerberas, just as an example for you, is placed a wire down the outside. Now, this is probably one of the most popular questions I get asked, is how to wire a gerbera. And if they're conditioned properly, they don't really need to be wired. If you care for your flowers properly, this method of taking a wire around the outside is really not needed anymore. It's quite an outdated method. If you've bought a good grade of flower from a florist, they will have conditioned them for you beforehand. What I don't like about this is it just looks a mess. It looks untidy. It draws attention to the stem of the gerbera. And as a florist who sells flowers to people, I always think this makes the flower look like it's a poor quality and you've had to support it by using an ugly old wire. So this one is a green florist wire that's a 56 gauge. And I've also done one where I've taped the wire in green tape, because I was hoping that this one, the one that's taped with the green tape, was going to be a little less conspicuous, but it's probably just as noticeable as the plain green wire. So if you are wiring gerbera, you need to use a green florist wire, either a 71 gauge or a 56, nothing stronger, because it will damage your gerbera. And if you condition them properly, then they won't need wiring at all. And if you're at home, florists in the florist shop have their gerberas delivered in these cardboard wraps, and we suspend them over a bucket of water, just like this, so that the stem itself floats over the bucket of water, so you don't then get any kinks or bends in the stem. And if you're at home and you're a home florist, home flower arranger, and you haven't got the cardboard tray like this, then use something like a cooling rack that you would bake your cakes on, and then you can thread the gerbras down. But if you condition them properly, they will stay lovely and straight for you, and they will work perfectly well in your arrangement. Now I have a packet of wires along my side, and one of my absolute pet hates, and I know I've talked quite a lot so far in this video, but this is aimed at complete beginners. So if you don't want to listen to all the theory that I've got to say, wind it on and get excited when I start arranging the flowers. But the basics is really, really important. And if you're learning to be a professional florist, you need to know how to care for your flowers and how to treat them properly. And gerbras, this is one of my bugbears with gerbras. What you will see a lot of untrained florists do is that they will poke the wire into the head there of the gerbera, up into the calyx, so the seed box that's under here. They'll poke a dirty, rusty old wire straight up into the gerbera head. What that then does is it introduces bacteria and air into the head, and it's going to cause premature aging. And I've got one here that I did a couple of days ago, just as an example. Now these are the same group of gerbras, they were delivered at the same time, and you can just see that where I introduced that wire, it's caused bacteria and premature aging on that gerbera, and it's looking really quite sad. So what you want to do instead is hook your gerbera, or not your gerbera, you need to hook your wire. So do a hook over the top, and I'll just bring my hand up there, hopefully you can see that. And then you're going to use that hook to support the head of the gerbera, like so. So the hook is around the neck of that gerbera. We haven't pierced it anywhere, and then I'm going to run that wire right the way down the stem, and it's going to give a little bit of extra support. Now really I should have my glasses on doing this, but then I can't see the screen. So we've gone all the way down, and then that will hold it nice and straight. And incidentally, if you are new to floristry and you do want to learn about floral design, I've got loads of courses on the website that you can participate in. You can either pay for an individual course, or you can pay for the subscription where you have access to all the courses. And I've got a great guide. It's the ultimate guide to care and conditioning, which will help you understand how to care and condition all the different flower types. And you'll find a link for that in the description box, where I name and list all the different flower varieties. Right, so let's get started. My floral foam, I'm going to work on this design facing me initially, and I'll turn it around every now and again. I am going to have to use the gerbera that's been wired, but I do really dislike what that looks like. And what I'm going to estimate is, I'm just going to swap from a knife to a scissors, because most of you, if you're beginners, probably use scissors. What I've done is I've estimated roughly what twice the height of my container would be, or slightly taller if you can. It depends on the material that you've got. And I'm starting to place my gerbera in the foam so it's straight. It's in the middle of the foam, and it's about 2/3 of the way back. And I'm aiming to have this in fairly straight, with the gerbera head facing the ceiling. I'm not angling this forward. The flower is facing the ceiling. If I turn that around, you will see that I'm back in the foam. This is the front, this is the back. I'm roughly, if I just draw a line, you might be able to see it more clearly. I'm roughly 2/3 of the way back. That gives me enough space behind to put some greenery, and it gives me plenty of room in front to put the rest of my flowers. Then what I'm looking to do is to put a flower at the base here, which is my base flower. And what I quite like about this one is it's slightly curving up, so that's going to work to my advantage. What I didn't want to do was put it up tall, because it looks like it's leaning forward, and it gives the impression that the flowers are falling over the front of the container. So I'm going to use this at the base, sitting on top of the container, so that it creates the bottom part of my arrangement, and then I will add some foliage tucked in quite nicely under there. And if we look at this from the side, I have a profile. It's not a flat arrangement, and I don't dip this flower in at the bottom. It's almost like a triangular shape being formed. Right angle for the minute at the back, and then we've got that base flower. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to place flowers in between to give me a very natural rhythmic line, almost like a ball is bouncing down the stairs. I'm not going to come down in a really severe line down the middle. We're going to rock back and forth to give me a really pleasant design. Now, generally speaking, this would be 5 or 7 flowers. But if you're going out to a supermarket and there's 10 roses or 10 carnations in the bunch, then use all 10. Just evenly space them out. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to use 5. And I'm going to give quite a big gap in between each flower. So what I'm doing with the gerbera here is cutting it straight. Now, you will hear people tell you to cut it at an angle, but we only cut it at an angle. The soft flower like a gerbera, you only cut it at an angle when it's going into water. If it's going into foam, it needs to be straight across. It's too soft and weak to place it in the foam at an angle. The stem structure isn't strong enough. So I've come one side, and then I'm going to come the opposite side of that centre line, and I've stepped forward in the foam every time I'm adding in a new flower. So we're working our way down towards the bottom. And if you're a little bit unsure of where to cut it, I can pretty much do it by eye now. Turn your flower upside down, estimate where you want it to be positioned, and then leave about 1 inch or so to place into the foam. And one little trick with gerbera, because they are a bit temperamental when it comes to going in foam, is to push them down a little bit lower than they actually want to go, and then raise it up slightly, because then the water will pool around the bottom of that gerbera and it won't get clogged up by the floral foam at the bottom. I've aimed to have a similar space between this one and this one, and then the flower that's going to go in between there. And the reason that I said don't overcomplicate it by buying lots of different flowers is because it's easier to learn this very natural rhythmic line with one flower type before you start. So a little bit closer to that focal point, and the spacing becomes a little closer. Just going to rearrange that one. As we come forward, we go from being upright with the flower touching the ceiling or facing the ceiling to slightly forward to meet this one at the bottom. And that is your line. That is your vertical line. That is the start of all floral designs. So we lead on from that one to an L shape, an asymmetrical triangle, a pedestal, and so forth. You might deem it a bit old-fashioned because the trend at the moment is for very loose, informal floral designs. But if you learn this, you can't go wrong. You'll be able to create anything in the future. The next stage I'm going to do is to add my foliage in. Some arrangers will add their foliage first, but the reason I like to add my flowers in first is because I can gauge the height of the arrangement with my flowers rather than gauging the height of my arrangement with foliage and then finding out I've made it too big for the size of my gerbera, or I've made it too small and I've got to cut my flowers down short. So I like to put the flowers in first, but if you've been taught to do foliage first, don't worry about it. There's more than one way of making an arrangement. Now, by my side I have a piece of palm. This is a palm leaf that you will be able to buy in a florist shop and sometimes get in a supermarket mixed bunch. And what you really don't want to do at this stage is to put a palm leaf at the back there, because it's too wide and heavy for the size and the shape of those gerbera. If the design was bigger and you were going to put some foliage in at the side, that would be okay, but it's really too messy and too heavy. We also don't want to do something with greenery like this that splays out and makes the design heavy at the top. You need to be small, thin and narrow, coming down fatter and wider at the bottom. I've also got some quite busy looking euonymus, and that is really going to be quite distracting there at the back. That would look gorgeous with white flowers, but it's really not complementing my pink flowers at all. So what I'm going to start by doing is firstly using some line material. So this is something that's shaped like a line. It's not heavy and full like my foliage that I just showed you, and this is going to come up towards the back. It's going to add some contrast, a bit of texture, and it's also going to start creating depth. It's going to draw your eye back slightly, and then I'm going to go in with the cordyline. Now these are from a garden plant, and I'm not splaying them out this way. I'm keeping everything contained within the size of my container. I'm not going any wider. And if you're wondering why I've mixed these two colour combinations together, why I've got a sort of burgundy brownish leaf alongside the pink gerbera, I nearly said carnation, it's because pink and red and brown are all the same colour. They all come from red. Brown is red with a bit of black added to it, and pink is red with white added to it. So if you learn your colours and your colour combinations, then you'll be able to mix colours together more successfully. What I've done here is I've placed my leaves straight upright. I'm not fanning them out because we're not making a triangle shape. We're almost making like a column effect down the middle. And I'm not going to add anything at the back because I don't want to make it really full and heavy there at the back. The different colours and the different textures will create that backward movement and create that three-dimensional look. And then what I'm going to do is finish off the arrangement with some greenery at the base. And I've got two different types. This one is box, and I try to think of some greenery that you might be able to get hold of from your garden or a friend's garden. And I'm not going wide again. I'm keeping the shape of this arrangement, or the size I should say of this arrangement, within the shape of my container. Just going to move that one slightly. It could be more upright. And the aim of this is to cover my floral foam and to add some weight at the bottom of the arrangement. And what I'm going to do here is bring it right the way around the back, because it's important that foam is covered at the back. If you are new to floral design, or you might even need some hints and tips if you've been arranging for a long time, if the foam isn't covered, the water will evaporate much faster and your foam will dry out. So always remember to cover your floral foam all the way around, front and back and the sides. So here we have a small bit of foliage added. There's no width added to the arrangement. It's almost within the size of my container. And then to create a bit of contrast, I've got a fatter, wider leaf. This is Photinia Red Robin. It's got a beautiful red stem to it, and that's going to help pick up on the colour of my leaves there at the back. And I'm going to mix the two foliages together. There is a lovely red leaf on the Photinia, but it's not quite opening. So I very brutally just cut it off because I don't need it in today's arrangement. But I'm going to keep going around, adding small bits of greenery in. This is quite a traditional design, so I'm not looking at placing the greenery in any unusual manner or grouping it together in any way. And the purpose is just that my floral foam is completely covered, and this is just fabulous. Now if you are thinking about garden shrubs and you want to grow some plants in the garden, the Photinia Red Robin is amazing because it has a beautiful burgundy reddish leaf in the autumn and through to the winter and Christmas. Whatever angle you look at this from now, you can't see the floral foam. You can see some beautiful textured greenery. Those 5 gerberas are clearly visible. I haven't hidden them by adding loads of different flowers and foliages. And I've got a very basic first step arrangement that you should all learn to do if you're training to be florists or flower arrangers. I know that there are many of you out there that won't like that green stem of the gerbera, but it's fine. It's plant material, it's a flower. You don't have to disguise absolutely everything. But if you really find it unpleasant, then just consider moving one of your leaves forward so that you're covering that leaf. I would need to spend a bit of time getting that in a better position. And I'm hoping that you've picked up some hints and tips on how to create that really simple arrangement. If I just recap on the basic information that I gave you right at the very beginning, pick a flower that is the same colour and the same shape. Don't confuse it by mixing your flower varieties and your flower shapes. Pick something in the top of the arrangement that links with the bottom, because that's really going to help you make a cohesive and pleasant design. Care and condition for your flowers properly before you start using them, particularly if you're buying supermarket flowers. Don't rush home and try and arrange with them straight away. Put them in some water overnight and let them rest and recover before you start arranging with them. Pick a container that matches your flower choice or something that's fairly neutral, and before you know it, you're going to be able to create a design just like this. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell to be told every time I upload a new tutorial. Stay to the end of the video because you'll get to see close-ups of all of the flowers and that link to the care and conditioning guide. Hop back for the next tutorial in the Back to Basics Part 2 series, where I'm going to teach you how to go from a line arrangement to an L shape. And I'll see you soon for that. Bye for now.